Masechet Avoda Zara, Daf Mem Dalid. The previous Mishnah taught that if one finds an item that is used for idolatry, then one is not allowed to get benefit from it. Rather, one must destroy it and throw it into the Dead Sea. Rabbi Yosef Omer, Shochek v'zoreh laruach o matil layam. And now we have a machloket about how precisely to destroy it. Rabbi Yosef says one should grind it into dust and throw it into the wind or into the sea. In other words, you should destroy it totally so that nobody will be able to benefit even from a broken part of it or even from the dust. You not only grind it, but even throw it into the wind or into the sea. It's totally gone. Amru lo afu na'asa zebel shenemar lo yidbak biyadecha me'uma min ha'cherem. However, the sages responded to the Biose and they said that's not good enough, because if you throw it into the wind and it goes onto the land, then that will be fertilizer. If the idol is made out of some organic material, it will be beneficial to the land. And the pasuk says, nothing of the prescribed item shall cleave to your hand, which means that you cannot get any benefit in any way, even in this very indirect way of it being fertilizer on the land. This seems to apply also to throwing it into the river, because if the river has these nutrients in it and it overflows onto the banks, and then it will make the land that's near the river more fertile. And so, according to Chachamim, you cannot deposit it in any place where it may benefit by fertilizing the land. Tanya, Amar lehem Rabbi Yosef, v'alo kevar ne'emar ve'et hatatchem asher asitem, et ha'egel lakachti v'asrof oto ba'esh v'aikot oto tachon, heteb, ad asher dak le'afar, v'ashtich et afaro el hanachal hayored min nahar. Now we're going to see a number of proofs that Rabbi Yosef brings from Tanakh, where we see that his suggestion is precisely what was done in the past. And this first proof is from Chet Ha'egel, where Moshe Rabbeinu in Sefer Devarim is recalling what he did with that golden calf. And he says, that sin, the calf that you made, I took and I burnt it with fire, I smashed it into pieces, I grinded it till it was very small, and till it was as fine as dust, and I put it into the brook that descended out of the mountain. So you see, Moshe did precisely this. He smashed it, ground it, and he put it into the river, which means putting it into the river is okay. That's a proof for Rabbi Yosef. Marlo, maybe it should be Amrulo, the rabbi said back to Rabbi Yosef, Misham Re'aya, that's not a proof. Hare hu omer, vayizer al penei hamayim, vayashket bnei Yisrael, lo nitkaven ela levodkan kesotot. The pasuk also says, back in Shemot, that Moshe put it on ground it into powder, strewed it upon the water, and made Bnei Yisrael drink it. Why did he make them drink it? To test them like a sotah. There's an analogy. Just like a wife who is suspected of adultery has to drink the sotah, water is the ink that are dissolved in water, to test if she is guilty or innocent, so too Bnei Yisrael and Hashem are like a wife and a husband, and Bnei Israel were unfaithful, and therefore they deserve this punishment of drinking a mixture of water with, and in this case, not ink, but rather it was the powder. And so therefore Moshe did not throw it into the river so that it could go and fertilize. Rather, he took some water from the river and put all of the powder of the burnt idol into that water, and the people drank it. And so therefore the rabbis say that's not a proof that you're allowed to throw the dust into the river. Moshe did not throw it into the river. He took some water from the river and turned it into sotah waters, and everybody drank it. Amar lehem Rabbi Yosef, v'alo kevar ne'emar, v'gam et ma'acha imo, hesira megebira asher aseta miflasta, v'gomer v'yadek v'yisrof b'nachal kidron. Rabbi Yosef says, okay, I have another proof. It says regarding King Asa that he removed Ma'acha, his mother, from being queen because she made an abominable image, an idol. Miflatzta, that was what it was called. And so he cut down this image and burnt it at the Kidron River. So you see that, look how he destroyed this idol. and he threw it into the Kidron River. Isn't that a proof for Rabbi Yosef? But the rabbi said to Rabbi Yosef, that's not a proof because nothing grows in the Kidron River. And so therefore there would be no benefit of fertilization because nothing grows there. So that's okay. You can throw it into some place, any place where it won't grow. That's why the Mishnah before, the earlier Mishnah said the Dead Sea, nothing grows there. So yeah, you could throw it there. That's why it was okay. But a river that would overflow to a place that's fertile, that would be prohibited. So the rabbis defend themselves. We ask about this fact. Is it true that Nachal Kidron doesn't grow anything? Ve'lo b'hatanya. Elu ve'elu mit'arabin be'amma v'yosein le'nachal Kidron v'limkarin lagananin lezebel u'mo'alin behen. There's a Mishnah in Masechet Yoma that says the remainder of the blood from the Mizbeach outside and the Mizbeach that's inside are mixed together, and they're thrown down a certain drain that's in the temple courtyard, and that extra blood, excess blood, flows down with the water to the Kidron River. And then when it comes out over there, it was sought after, and the gardeners would buy it and use it as fertilizer. What do we see here? That the Kidron River does have areas that are fertile and things do grow in them. Halacha also says here that they had to buy it because otherwise it would be me'ilah. This is something that is consecrated to the Bet HaMikdash, and so therefore it was holy, and so therefore they had to buy it. Not holy like a korban, but still they would have to pay for it and then thereby redeem it, and that way they could use it. But the point is that the gardeners would use it, and this was in the Kidron River. So doesn't that mean that there are places that are fertile in the Kidron River? And the answer is yes. Mekomot yesh bo. There's different places. Some places are fertile, some places are not. Yesh makom megadel semachin, yesh makom shen megadel semachin. Some places will grow vegetation, and that's what this Mishnah in Masechet Yoma was talking about. The gardeners in those places would bid for this excess blood. It was considered like good luck, and they would use it as fertilizer. But when the rabbis were saying that, you can throw it into the Nachal Kidron because nothing grows there, and they used that to reject the Yosef's proof, they had in mind the areas on the Kidron River where there is no fertile, where nothing grows. My miflasta, tangent, what does this mean, miflasta? Why is the idol called that name? Amar Rav Yehuda dahava mafli lesanuta. It's because mafli intensifies a lot of lesanut, of licentiousness. Like we saw before, a lot of times there's a name of a god or goddess or some idol that is the historical name, but the Gemara likes to make fun of idols. It's a mitzvah to make fun of idolatry, and therefore often will make a play on words in order to make fun of these things. Kedetane Rav Yosef, kemin zachrut asta la v'hayta nib'ayelet lo bechol yom. And Rav Yosef explained in what way does this idol increase licentiousness? Well, the idol was formed in the form of a male organ, and Ma'acha would use it every day to engage in such activity, and so that's why it was called mafli lesanuta. Amar lehen Rabbi Yosef, v'halo kevar ne'emar, v'chitat nechash nechoshet asher asa Moshe. Okay, Rabbi Yosef has another proof that, remember that serpent that Moshe made in order to stop the plague? Everybody would look up at the bronze snake. And that lasted a long time. It was kept around until the time of King Hizkiah. And he saw that the people are worshiping this serpent. It was not made to be a worshiping item. The Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah says you're supposed to just lift it up, and the people will raise their eyes towards heaven and then remember Hashem, and then then the plague would stop. But the people misinterpreted the symbol after some time, and Hizkiah decided to smash it into pieces. So doesn't that mean that, how do you destroy a piece of an idol? Well, you smash it into pieces, and that's what Rabbi Yosef said. That's all you got to do. Amru lo misham re'aya harehu omer vayomer Hashem el Moshe aseh lecha seraf lecha mishelecha ben adam oseh davar she'eno shelo v'atam bedinu dechatute la vasarich ela kevan dechaza dekata'u Yisrael batre amad v'chiteto. So the rabbi said to him, are you bringing a proof from there? There's no proof from there that you just have to smash it up into powder and then it doesn't matter what happens after, even if somehow someone might get benefit from it. That's what Rabbi Yosef was saying as a proof. Look, they just smashed it up, and whatever they did afterwards with it, maybe they threw it into the wind. So the Yosef brought that as a proof. But the rabbi said there's no proof from there because it was never actually an idol. The pasuk says that Hashem told Moshe, make for yourself a serpent. For yourself means from your property. And there is a halacha that one person cannot make an idol out of something that belongs to someone else. If I go to your farm and I go and start bowing down to a cow of yours, does that make your cow an idol? It doesn't. I don't have the power to make your cow prohibited. Or even if I take your cow without your permission and I slaughter it to an idol, does that cow become prohibited as an idolatrous sacrifice? The answer is it does not. I only have the power to make prohibited something that I own. I can't make prohibited something that you own. And so too here, when Moshe made this bronze serpent, Moshe had in mind L'Shem Shamayim. So it was not an idol from Moshe's point of view. The fact that other people who did not own the item later on worshipped it as an idol does not actually make it an idol, and therefore it did not have to be destroyed. So really, from the letter of the law, it would not even have to be demolished. Chizkiah did not have to demolish it. The people were bowing down to something, but it didn't belong to them, so it doesn't make it prohibited. But Chizkiah wanted to be machmir. He saw that people were straying after it, so he decided to destroy it. But he didn't have to destroy it in the halachic way, in the legal way that idols are destroyed, and therefore it was sufficient just to turn that into powder. But if something was really an idol, then you cannot just turn it into powder and then get benefit from that powder as fertilizer, and so there's no proof from here. Rabbi says, okay, I have another proof. And this is after a war that King David and his army won this war. And it says the enemy left their images there, their idols, and David and his men took them away. They carried them, literally, which means that they took them. Peshat means that they took these idols, which is not a great thing. But we reinterpreted that already. David, lishana dezaruyehu, kedemetargem Rav Yosef tizrem, veruach tisaem, targeminan tizrenun, veruach tetal telinun. And how do we know that the word Vayisam, we should not interpret as literally carrying it and taking it for themselves, but rather it means grinding it up and throwing it into the wind? Well, we know that from the Targum. Rav Yosef was an expert at Targum, and this pasuk in Yeshaya that has the same word Vatisaem. Now there, it does say that they tizerem veruach tisaem, you will winnow them and the wind will carry them away. And the Targum there says you shall fan them and the wind will carry them away. Now, even though in Yeshaya it actually says that the wind will carry it away, not the people carrying it away, which it says in the pasuk in Shemuel says that the soldiers carried them away. Nevertheless, we're taking the word vayisaem, kind of like a gezer shava, and just like in Yeshaya means throwing it into the wind. So to here, we can assume that the soldiers did not take these idols for themselves, but rather smashed them and threw the dust into the wind. And so we can learn from here to be Yosef that it's sufficient to smash an idol and throw it into the wind, and you don't have to worry about it fertilizing any land. But the rabbis rejected this and said, that's your proof? Harehu omer, vayisarefu ba'esh, umidlaketi vayisrefem vayisaem, shemamina vayisaem mamash. No, but there's a pasuk in Divrei Yamim. It's a parallel pasuk, except that the one in Divrei Yamim, describing also David and his soldiers, says that David gave an order, the enemy left their idols there, and David said an order, and they burnt the idols with fire. So in Divrei Yamim, it's clear that they burnt them with fire. But the pasuk in Shemot does not say they burnt them and they carried them. It just says they carried them. Therefore, the pasuk in Shemuel is peshat. It means that they carried them and took them for themselves. It doesn't mean that they burnt them. It doesn't mean that they smashed it and threw it into the wind, but rather they carried them, which they weren't allowed to do. But you cannot prove anything from Shemuel that they smashed them and threw them into the wind. They didn't do that at all. They violated a prohibition and took these idols for themselves. So there is no proof. Okay, so the rabbis rejected Rabbi Yosef's proof, but through the rejection, they brought a pasuk in Divrei Yamim that contradicts the pasuk in Shemuel. So now we ask about that. Mikol makom kashu kera'eh hadadeh. Now we have something, we're in worse trouble, because the pasuk in Shemuel says that they took the idols for themselves. The parallel pasuk in Divrei Yamim says that they burnt the idols. Which one is it? Oh, the answer is what Rav Huna says, because he brought up these two pasukim themselves, and it says in Divrei Yamim that David commanded them and they burnt the idols in fire. But the other pasuk in Shemuel says that they took the idols away. Lakashya, kan kodem sheba itai hagiti, kan lacha sheba itai hagiti. There's no problem. We put them in sequential order. When David and his soldiers saw these idols, before Itai Hagiti came, they were burning them. That's the pasuk in Divrei Yamim, because they had to destroy them by smashing them up and burning them. But then Itai Hagiti, he was not Jewish. He was an ally of David, but he was not Jewish, and you need a non-Jew in order to nullify an idol. Once Itai Hagiti came, they said, "Oh, Itai, you're here. Fantastic. Come over here and take these idols and nullify them." And so he could nullify them and leave them intact. And then they could take them home and they can benefit from them because they were nullified from being idols. And so that's the other pasuk in Shemuel, is after Itai Giti came and nullified them, that's when they were able to take them home. Tichtib, Vaikach et atet malka me'al rosh mishkala kikar zahav, u'mi yishareh isureh hana'aninu, amar Rav Nachman, Itai Giti ba'u bitela. And this answer of Itai Giti answers a different question too. A pasuk in Sefer Shemuel says that after a successful battle against the king of Ammon, David and his army won, and then they took the crown of the Ammonite king, and it was very heavy. It weighed a talent of gold and had precious stones, and they put it on King David's head. And the question is, Umishare, was that permitted to do? Isure hana'aninhu. That crown was used for idolatry, and therefore one is not permitted to get any benefit from it. King David was not allowed to wear it. So how did they put it on his head? Amar Rav Nachman, Itai Giti ba'u bitila. And the answer is that Rav Nachman explained that Itai Giti, he was not Jewish. The owner doesn't have to be the one to nullify it. Any idolater, any non-Jew can nullify an idol. And so they had Itai Giti with them, and he came and he nullified it. So just like he nullified that crown, so too he nullified the idols that the army had taken, and therefore they were allowed to take them home. Mishkala kikar zahav. Now, a question about this crown that weighed a talent of gold. Hechi matzeh manachla. How can you put that on your head? It's too heavy. It'll weigh your head down. Amar Rav Yehuda amar Rav Re'uya lanuach al rosh David. When it says that they placed it on his head, doesn't mean literally that they placed it on his head and that he wore it. It would be too heavy to actually wear, but rather that they tried it on and it was fit to rest on David's head. It was the right size. And that's a sign that King David was worthy of being the king. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina Amar, Even shoebet hayta ba dahavat dara la. Or another answer, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina says that they had a pulling stone. We call that a magnet. And the magnet would hold it up. So they had some kind of mechanism, a stone in the crown, a magnet in the crown, and they had another magnet above, and that would help to alleviate the weight on the king's head. Rabbi Elazar Amar Eben Yekara Itaba Sheshava Kikar Zahav. Or another answer, the crown itself did not weigh a talent, didn't have a talent of gold in it, but rather there was a precious stone that was worth a talent of gold. But the precious stone was much smaller and much lighter. So it wasn't actually that heavy. Zo tayetali kifi kodecha nasarti. Now, a different pasuk in Tehillim that we want to explain. That's related to what we just said. This I have had as I have kept your precepts. My kamad. What is this pasuk talking about? What's this? Hachi kamad. Bischash shepikodecha nasarti. Zo tayetali le'adut. It means, as a reward for following your commandments, Hashem, this was a testimony for me. My eduta, what was it testifying? Amar bi Yoshua ben Levi, shaya manicha b'mkom tefillin ve'ho lamto. So that this is referring to a crown. This crown, and Yoshua ben Levi said that he put it on the spot where you usually put your tefillin, and it fit perfectly. Up there on the crown, the tefillin is compared also to a crown. And so he put the crown up on his head where the tefillin usually go, and it fit perfectly. And that shows, because David is saying, I followed your commandments, Hashem, therefore I was worthy to get the crown. Now questions, how could he put the crown on? Didn't he have to wear tefillin? They wore tefillin all day. So how could he put the crown and also the tefillin? Amar Rabbi Shemuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, makom yesh barosh, sharu laniach bo shete tefillin. Rabbi Shemuel bar, the son of Rabbi Yitzchak, says there actually is space on one's head to put two tefillin. And in fact, there was the practice of some mikubalim to have very small tefillin, and they would wear two at the same time, Rashi and Benutam, and they put one under the kippah and one showing. But as long as the tefillin are not too big, there is in fact space for two. So King David put both. He had a crown and also he wore tefillin. Vayosiu et ben hamelech v'yitenu alav et hanezer ve'et ha'edut. Nezer zo kilila. Edut, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Edut hu lebet David. Shekol ha'ra'u l'malchut maholamto, v'chol she'eno ra'u l'malchut and holamto. Similar derasha regarding King Yoash. Says they brought out the king's son and put upon him a crown, nezer, and testimony, and they made him a king. So nezer, that refers to the crown. That's easy. But the testimony, what is that referring to? Rav explains, it's a testimony that he is the proper lineage from the house of David to be king, because anyone who is worthy to be king, the crown will fit him properly. And if he's not worthy to be king, the crown will not fit him properly. It's kind of like the magic wands in Harry Potter that has to fit the owner. So to here, it might mean physically that the crown fits, or it could mean in other ways in terms of his character and abilities and leadership, that if he's worthy, then the crown will fit. He'll be able to fill in the job of being the king if he is worthy of having that position. Va'adoniya ben Chagit mitnaseh lemor, ani emloch. And now another pasuk related to this, it says Adoniya, son of Chagit, he rebelled against his father. He made himself king. Mitna says hitpael. Hitpael can mean a reflexive, to do something to oneself. So he was exalting himself, saying, I'm king. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav shemitnaseh leholmo velo holamto. The hitpael could also mean to be as if, to fake something. And so Rav says that's the meaning here. Exalted himself means he wanted to have the crown fit him. He was trying, but it did not actually fit him. Mitnaseh, he was trying again and again, make it fit this way, that way, but the crown did not fit him because he was not worthy to be the king. Now Adonijah, while he was making believe he was king, he made himself chariots and riders and 50 people running before him. We ask, what's the big deal? I mean, it's a lot, but lots of rich people would have horses and chariots and people running before them. So what's so special about this? Doesn't necessarily mean he's the king. It wasn't just regular 50 people, but rather runners, expert runners, so expert that they had their spleens removed and the soles of their feet hollowed out. This was apparently an ancient practice that the spleen would be removed in a surgery. If you survived that surgery somehow miraculously, then it would make someone faster. Apparently, an enlarged spleen is not good for running, and the soles of their feet, maybe to fix their arches or something. Any surgery back then without any anesthesia would have been horrible. They got them really drunk, but whatever. Some professional runners, when they needed to, they had these things. So 50 people running before you, that's no big deal. But 50 professional runners that had these surgeries, and were very high level and rare, that is something special. And so he had that, and that's what showed that he was trying to be king. Next Mishnah. Sha'al Peroklos ben Pelosphos את רבן גמליאל בעכו שהיה רוחץ במרחץ של אפרודיטי. אמר לה, כתוב בתורתכם, לא ידבק בידך מאומה מן החרם, מפני מה אתה רוחץ במרחץ של אפרודיטי. One time, Proclus, the son of Philosophos, which sounds like philosopher, maybe his father's name was Mr. Philosopher, or it means that Proclus himself was a philosopher. That is interesting if he was a philosopher and not simply an idolater. And in fact, Professor Azan Yadin wrote an article about this very story, a very important article, arguing that this guy who's asking Rabban Gamaliel is not himself an idolater, but a philosopher. The philosophers back in the times of the Romans, they themselves did not believe in idolatry. Plato, Aristotle, they made fun of idolatry. Sometimes they'd go along with it and go to a temple just for social reasons, but they thought that all that mythology was silly. And so therefore, the question here is not, if so, is not from an idolater, but from a philosopher who himself does not believe in idols and is therefore challenging Rabban Gamaliel. What was the challenge? Rabban Gamaliel was in Akko, and Rabban Gamaliel, he's the Nasi, very important person, and he would go to the bathhouse of Aphrodite. Now, Aphrodite was the goddess of beauty and fertility. And if you ever see any statues of Aphrodite, they can be quite suggestive. So you imagine the chief rabbi going to a bathhouse. Okay, that's okay. You have to go. It's nice to go to a bathhouse. You have to be clean and hygienic, but very inappropriate to go in front of Aphrodite. And besides the fact that she's not so clothed, is that it's an idol. So how could you do that? And now this philosopher knows some Torah. And he says, doesn't it say in your Torah, in Sefer Devarim, that nothing that is prohibited shall cleave to your hand? You're not allowed to get any benefit. And you are getting benefit from the bathhouse of Aphrodite. Why are you going and washing in the bathhouse? It could be that the philosopher himself had a problem with it. He didn't believe in it. He's like, you Jewish people, the leader of the Jews, you believe in one God, you're a philosophical people. Many of Romans called the Jews a philosophical people because they rejected all this idolatry. So he says, what are you doing? How could you allow yourself to go into the bathhouse? Amar lo, en mishibin b'merchaz. Rabban Gamaliel answered, says, you're not allowed to answer in a bathhouse. That's halacha. You're not allowed to speak divrei Torah in a bathhouse. Now, this is a kind of a paradox because this itself is a halacha. So by saying you're not allowed to respond in a bathhouse because you're not allowed to say divrei Torah in a bathhouse, that itself is a dvar Torah. Okay, the Gemara will ask about that. But anyway, he just gave a short answer in the bathhouse. Uchsheyasa lo ani lo bati bigbula hi ba'a bigbuli. She says, Rabban Gamaliel says, I didn't come into her domain, she came into my domain. En omrim naaseh merchatz noi la'Aphrodite, ela omer naaseh Aphrodite noi la'merchatz. No one ever says, let's make a bathhouse as an adornment to a statue of Aphrodite. Rather, they say, let's make a statue of Aphrodite as an adornment to the bathhouse. So the point is that this statue of Aphrodite is just an adornment. The primary purpose of this building here is to be a bathhouse. I'm allowed to go to a bathhouse. And so therefore, the fact that they made an Aphrodite here, this is not as an idol, but only as an adornment. I didn't go into an idolatrous temple. Then if something was built, a whole temple built for an idol, that would certainly be prohibited. But I didn't go into her domain. She came into my domain, right? This is a bathhouse, and then someone came and put an idol, a statue here as an adornment, but it's still a bathhouse, so it's not an idol, and therefore it's permitted. That's answer number one. The answer number one has two parts, right? I came into its domain. She came into my domain, not I into its, but it explains it. That it's just a decoration. But another answer, דבר אחר. אם נותנים לך ממון הרבה, אתה נכנס עבודה זרה שלך ערום, ובעל קרי ומשתין בפניה. זו עומדת על פי הביב, וכל העם משתינין לפניה, לא נאמר אלא אלוהיהם, את שנוהג בו משום אלוה אסור, את שאינו נוהג בו משום אלוה mutar. Rabban Gamaliel says, if someone would give you all the money in the world, an idolater, you, the idolater, would not go into the place of an Avoda Zara naked and tameh through an emission and urinate in front of it, right? That would not be a nice thing to do. Nobody would do that to something that they regarded as holy. Even if you paid them a lot of money, nobody would disgrace something holy in that way. And look at Aphrodite. What happens? It stands on the sewage pipe, and all the people come in and they urinate in front of it. It's basically a sewage pipe because that's what people do in the bathhouse in front of the idol. So therefore, there's no problem. The pasuk says that their gods, you cannot worship their gods. Only a being that they treat as a god, that we're not allowed to get any benefit from and be in front of and do anything. But if they themselves don't treat it like a god, then it's permitted. That shows that they're seeing this just as a statue, just as something that is made for beautification and adornment, but they don't treat it as an idol, and therefore there is no prohibition. That's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara is going to ask, the question is on the first answer that Rabban Gamaliel said in the bathhouse when he said, I can't answer you. How could he even say, I can't answer you? Don't we have the halacha from Rabbi Yochanan that you're allowed to think about Torah everywhere except in a bathhouse and in a bathroom? So you can't even think about Torah. Certainly you can't say words of Torah. And Rabban Gamaliel, by saying, I can't answer you in a bathhouse, that itself is a halacha. He wasn't allowed to say that. Maybe you'll say he didn't say it to it in Hebrew, he said it in a secular language, and maybe saying words of Torah in a secular language is okay in a bathhouse. But Rabban said that secular matters you're allowed to speak about in Hebrew, even in a bathhouse. You can speak Hebrew in a bathhouse as long as you're talking about secular matters. But holy matters, words of Torah, halachot, you're not allowed to say in a bathhouse, even if you say them in a different language. That doesn't help. And so it wouldn't help if he was talking to him in Greek. It still would be prohibited. And the answer is Tana, Kesheyasa Marlo, and Meshibid Mamerchatz. No, Rabban Gamaliel didn't say, I can't answer you while he was in the bathhouse. Rather, while he was in the bathhouse, he just said, later, right? Wait till later. I can't answer you now, I'll tell you later. That's all he said in the bathhouse. Afterwards, when he got asked, says, listen, let me explain to you why I couldn't give you an answer in the bathhouse. It's because you're not allowed to say Divrei Torah in a bathhouse. And then he told them the whole answer. So that explains what Rabban Gamaliel did. He did not actually say the words of the halacha that you're not allowed to speak in the bathhouse while he was in the bathhouse. Amar Rav Chama bar Yosef Rabbi Amar Rabbi Oshaya Teshubah genuba heshibo Rabban Gamaliel lo'oto hegmon va'ani omer ena genuba. Rav Chama bar Yosef, the distinguished one, said in the name of Rabbi Oshaya that Rabban Gamaliel gave a deceptive answer to this philosopher. It was not a real answer. However, Rav Chama says, I think myself that it was not a deceptive answer, but rather it was a truthful, honest answer. We're going to offer a few explanations of this. Mai genuvte. What does Rabbi Oshaya mean that Rabban Gamaliel's answer was not real, but it was a deceptive answer, just to get rid of this perokulus philosopher? The Ka'amar lo, zo medet al pi habi v'chol adam mashtin befaneha. V'chi mashtin befaneha, mai haveh v'hamar rava pe'or yochiach she'mefa'arin lefana b'chol yom ve'no batel. That which Rabban Gamaliel says, look, everybody, the statue stands on the sewer and everybody urinates in front of it, and therefore you see it's not an idol. And that's not true. So what? Just because people are urinating in front of it, that doesn't mean that it's not an idol. After all, Rava explained the way that people served the idol called peor is they would defecate in front of it every day. That doesn't make it nullified, right? That's what they did. So over here also, the fact that they urinated in front of it would not necessarily mean that it's not an idol. So that's what Rabbi Oshaya said, right? So that claim, Rabban Gamaliel, was to pacify Proklos. He would be convinced by it. But halachically, it was not a true answer. V'ani omer, and agenu ba'zo avodata bekach, v'zo en avodata bechach. Rav Chama, however, says, no, this was an honest answer, because there is a difference. For pe'od, that is the regular way to worship it. And any time this is the one worships an idol in the way that the idolaters themselves worship it, even if it's a disgusting manner, that is called the way that they worship it. And that's why it's not called nullified. But Aphrodite, that's not the normal way to worship Aphrodite. And therefore, it's considered demeaning, a demeaning act. And that shows that they are not considering the statue to be an idol. It was a real answer. Amar Abaye, Ginu bata mehacha. Abaye says, I have a different explanation for why Rabbi Oshaya said that it was a deceptive answer. Tekam Raleh, Ani lo bati bigbula v'hi ba'a bigbuli. When Rabban Gamaliel says, I didn't go into the domain of Aphrodite. Aphrodite came into my domain. I'm just in a bathhouse. This is my domain. V'hi ba'a bigbula may have. And so what if Rabban Gamaliel would go into a domain of Aphrodite? Then would that necessarily be prohibited? It would not, because we learned in the Mishnah later in this Masechet V'Tanan, Avoda Zara sheyesh la merchatz o gina nehenin men shelo betoba if there is an idol that happens to have a bathhouse or a garden in front of it. And so this would be a bathhouse or garden that's made for the idol. So this would actually be a place of idolatry where the bathhouse is there to beautify the idol. And the halacha there says one can get benefit from the garden or from the bathhouse as long as you don't show favor to the idolaters by paying money. But if you're not paying money, then you can benefit from it because you're not serving the idol. You're just benefiting from this side point, the garden or the bathhouse that's there. That shows that even if the bathhouse was in fact made as a decoration for the idol, and the idol was there first, still it would be permitted. So Rabban Gamaliel was saying a deceptive thing. His statement was not halachically true. In fact, it would be permitted whether the idol was there first and the bathhouse was made for the idol, or the bathhouse was made first and the idol was only brought in as a decoration for the bathhouse. Either way actually would be permitted. That's Abaye explains it to be Oshaya. Va'ani omed, and according to that, Rav Chama answered and says, Ena genuba shelo betobat Rabban Gamaliel ketobat acherim dameh, because Rabban Gamaliel is special. Even if he doesn't show favor by paying anything, the fact that he goes is the same as someone else showing favor and going. Because when someone great, like Rabban Gamaliel, someone famous does something, he's giving his endorsement. And even though he's not paying, that helps out the bathhouse. Everybody will say, oh look, this bathhouse is good enough for Rabban Gamaliel, must be good enough for me too. So he got an endorsement deal. And so that would actually be the same as someone else paying the bathhouse. And that's why the Rav Chama says that, in fact, there is a distinction for Rabban Gamaliel. If he would go to a place that was originally an idol, that had a bathhouse that was built afterwards for it, then that would be prohibited, because it's the same as someone paying for it. For Rabban Gamaliel, it's only permitted if he goes to a place that's primarily a bathhouse that happens to have a statue that was built there later. Rav Shimi bar Chia Amar, Genu vata mehacha. A third explanation of why Rabbi Oshaya thought that this is a deceptive answer. Tekamar lo, zo medet alabi v'chol adam mashtin befaneha. V'chi mashtinin befaneha, mayhaveh, v'atenan rak befaneha, hishtin befaneha, gerera v'zarak ba et haso'a, hare zo ena betela. So Rav Shimi says, like the first answer, the fact that what Rabban Gamaliel said, that look at the statue, it stands on the sewer and everybody urinates before it. And therefore, you see, it's not an idol. But he says, just because people urinate in front of it, does not mean that it's not considered an idol, because we have a Mishnah in this Masechet later on that says, if someone spits in front of an idol, or urinates in front of it, or drags it, or throws feces at it, it is still, its status as an idol is still not nullified. It's still considered an idol. And so this is an exact parallel. This is exactly what we're talking about. And therefore, you see, Rabban Gamaliel, he said this answer just to get rid of this praklus, but halachically it would actually be prohibited either way. ואני אומר, אין הגנו בה הטעם לפי שעתה הורתך עלה, והאדם מפייס לה, והכה כל שעתה ושעתה בזלזולה, קיימה רב חמא then said, but I don't think it was a deceptive answer. In that Mishnah, where he urinated in front of it one time or spit in front of it one time, that she did it one time temporarily because he was angry at the idol. Something bad happened to the guy. He lost a business deal, and he comes to his idol, and he slaps it, and he spits at it, and because, how could you do this to me? But later on, he calms down, and he says, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I urinated in front of this idol, and he apologized to the idol, and they make up. So if you do that, he's still considering an idol. Sometimes people get angry and do such a thing. But regarding Aphrodite in the bathhouse, that every single day, every hour, everybody's going there and doing their thing in front of it. So that certainly is a disparagement. It's not a temporary anger that they're disparaging it. They're doing this all the time. It's placed right there in the bathroom. So that clearly is not considered an idol. So Rav Chama says, it was, in fact, a good answer. Rabban bar Ola Amar, Genubta mehacha. Yet another explanation for why Rabbi Oshaya says it was a deceptive answer. Tekamar le'en omrim na'aseh melchatz noi l'Aphrodite, ela na'aseh Aphrodite noi lamelchatz. V'chi amar na'aseh melchatz l'Aphrodite noi, mai haveh, v'atanya omer bayit ze la'avoda zara, kos ze la'avoda zara, lo amar kelum, she'en hekdesh la'avoda zara. Rabban bar Ola says, the deception was when Rabban Gamaliel said that we do not make a bathhouse as a Rabban bar Ola says that the deception was in the statement that Rabban Gamaliel told Proklos that people don't say, I'm going to make a bathhouse as an adornment to Aphrodite, but rather people say, I'm going to make an idol of a statue of Aphrodite as an adornment for a bathhouse. And so here's the deception. Even if someone would say that I want to make a bathhouse as an adornment to Aphrodite, and Aphrodite is the main thing, so what? Would that make it prohibited? It would not, because we learned in the Braita. If someone says just verbally, this house is an idolatrous house, this cup is an idolatrous cup, he hasn't said anything, because the laws of Hekdesh do not apply to Avoda Zara. When it comes to Hekdesh, if you just say, this animal is Hekdesh, this cup is Hekdesh, it becomes Hekdesh just by saying the statement. That's true for consecrating something to the Bet HaMikdash. When it comes to Avodah Zarah, just saying this thing is Avodah Zarah does not make it Avodah Zarah until someone actually worships it and uses it for Avodah Zarah. And so therefore, just saying something is Avodah Zarah is meaningless. And therefore, that's the trick in the Rabban Gamaliel statement. It really doesn't matter if someone said it this way or that way. Saying anything is Avodah Zarah does not effectuate. So therefore, even if he said, I want the bathhouse to be a adornment for Aphrodite, it still would not be prohibited. Vani omer, en agenuba, nehi de'itasure la mitasra, noi mihaika. But Rav Chama says, I think that Rabban Gamaliel was being sincere, and his statement was halachically valid, because even though the bathhouse would not become prohibited as idolatry, or in these cases, these things would not be idolatry just by a verbal statement, and so to the bathhouse, just because you said it verbally, would not be prohibited in and of itself as an idol, but it would still have the status of an adornment to idolatry. And if in fact the Aphrodite is the main thing, then okay, Aphrodite would be the idol if they made it as an idol, and then still the adornment to the idol would still be prohibited. And so that this is in fact true. If Aphrodite was the main thing and they made that as an idol, then the bathhouse would in fact also be prohibited as an adornment. And so you see that the distinction that Rabban Gamaliel told Proklos was a legally valid and honest distinction. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.